defenses and they're kind of blocking that lane. So
Yeah.
there will be a point where maybe Exodus need to kind of back up and regroup, and then maybe try and attack from the other side, or try and get through a different lane.
For sure, for sure.
So that's,
go hit me with questions.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So I'm loving the kind of the strategy playing it here, and I'm just watching them. Oh, and there we go. So that's that Marine attack halted for a second. They're kind of pushing them back a little bit, pushing them all the way to the phase gate. But the next thing I want to mention is kind of how pretty this is actually looking. There's some really, really nice visuals in here. I mean, if I just quickly, for the sake of my video, jump in, here we go. So just while I'm talking about this, I'm just going to jump around and do a little bit of floating around in first person, well, in the floaty cam. But yeah, so this game's got kind of, I sensed a lot of kind of nice atmosphere from it. That I don't know, the first game I kind of measured this up against was the competitive mode of Aliens versus Predator 2, because it's kind of that Marines versus Aliens, and I thought, well, that's probably my closest experience to something like this I've had. So that I'll see if it draws from there, and it's kind of 10 times better than that, obviously because of advances in tech and things like that. But it's just got that. The maps seem drenched in atmosphere, even though there's not a story going on. It just seems that kind of the gloomy lighting, the kind of the way the mood's set across the map. If you're a lone Marine venturing around, there is that kind of air of, is there something behind me? It's not it's not an actual intense scare. You're not going to be putting this under the horror genre, but there's certainly an edge to it, that the maps and the way the lighting is and just how they're laid out, it just kind of lends itself to it nicely.
There is, and we have tried to tell a little bit of a story through the maps. The idea is they're all part of one giant facility, various parts that we have a mine shaft map, which is intended to be kind of at the bottom. We have a map called Summit, which is at the top. We have a map called Tram, which is kind of a loading station. We have Docking, which is the point where new workers come to the facility. And so each map kind of ties and flows, and each map tells a story. They're all completely unique, and there's definitely, we've tried to make these maps very, very, very rich. There are 6 of them at launch. There'll be 7 soon after. So there's a lot of them, and they're very different. And you mentioned kind of the scare. I'm not sure if you've seen it yet, but actually in all of these rooms, and it's quite rare in competitive play, but it's more common in pub play, all the lights can go out, and the room can become pitch dark with blackness.
Oh, wow.
With everything but the flashlight of the Marine and the explosions of grenades and the muzzle flash, everything going dark. And the reason for that is if you go into the middle of the map with me right now, where there's 2 resource points, there's a pair of Marines trying to build a phase gate there. It's called nanogrid status. If you go there and then look next to the nanogrid hologram, which is in the middle of the room near the resource points, there's a thing on the wall called a power node. And if the aliens destroy that power node in any room, out go the lights, off go the structures. It actually can be a legitimately scary experience. Even me, having played literally almost 1,000 hours of NS2, it can be terrifying when you've got a skulk leaping at you out of the pitch darkness, and all you can see with them is with your flashlights. So there is definitely a depth to that as well, and we hope that some of the rooms with all their nooks and crannies can really lend themselves to that darkness scare.
Yeah, because it's definitely something I picked up on. It's certainly, as I said, got that kind of that atmosphere as where you're walking around. You do feel uneasy, especially when you're kind of on your own. If you've got a team with you, you can communicate, got someone watching behind. But other than that, you kind of have to twitch around a little bit. I was feeling quite a bit nervous when I was playing, especially the first couple of matches. I was like, oh my god, it's kind of all a bit creepy up in here. And then as you walk through and you get more towards kind of where the enemy base is, especially if you've encountered 1 or 2, to expect it. But all of a sudden you walk on, and you've got that kind of really nice gooey green acid type substance that's all over the enemy. Yeah, the infestation. Yes. That just kind of, you see that creeping along all the walls, and you just think, right, I seem to have stumbled on something a bit bad here.
Exactly, and that alien infestation does grow dynamically depending on where the aliens are. So, if they put down a hive, it'll grow. If they spread it, they can spread it to areas they control and grow that infestation. And that really does a good job of marking out who owns which part of the map. It delineates territory. So when you see the alien goop all over the walls, you're in alien territory then.
Yeah, to be definitely watching out. So, so that's the kind of first bit on graphics. And then that kind of, after doing a little bit of research and finding out, because unfortunately I wasn't I wasn't in a position to be able to play natural selection, unfortunately. but I learned it was actually a Half-Life mod, and then you guys originally started building this game on the Source engine, and then promptly switched to the Spark engine.
Yes.
Was there a reason behind that? Is it just a case of this could provide you with more of what you wanted, or was it just a case of actually you've got an opportunity to be able to build something yourself here? It's going to be tailored to exactly what you want, and you may as well take the full advantage of it and really try and drive home, the vision that you had for the game.
It's a combination of all of that. When we started out with Source is a great engine. It can do a lot of games really well. It wasn't necessarily the perfect fit for us technically in a lot of ways. We were trying to push it in Prodder into directions that it wasn't necessarily comfortable with. It wasn't necessarily perfectly stable. It just wasn't a perfect fit. And Unknown Worlds at the time, Charlie, Max, we decided that it was perhaps an opportunity to create our own technology, and the possibilities that opens up, Stephen, is just off the wall mental. There is so much you can do once you've got your own engine, and as you said, you can tailor it exactly to your needs. Some of that is real-time dynamic lighting, which Source can't do, which Spark can, which means we can cut the lights to rooms, we can have the emergency lighting come on, things like that. That's a small example. Other things are we have no map compile times, which means mappers can iterate on their maps very fast. We can have open source game code written in a Lua script, which means it's very, very easy for people to mod the game. We can have, we can distribute our own tools on our own terms. So there's a huge amount of possibilities that having our own engine opens up, and it's definitely something we're very proud of. And we hope people will enjoy playing in it and making things with it.
Brilliant. Well, that's that's definitely a good enough reason to get your own engine, really. So yeah, just going back to the game here, I've noticed Exodus have kind of in that main area where the power node was that you were explaining to me.
Yes.
They're kind of the Exodus is switching in between that, and then this phase gate is linked to it's actually linked to one of the starting places of.
Yes.
Where you can start off where IKEA were originally before. So is that kind of they hold that as a secondary base, or is it does it have the full functionality of their primary base, or is it simply just a little kind of expansion that now they're kind of using that ground with that phase gate to kind of launch a two-pronged offensive?
It's a combination of factors. Anywhere on the map can be your main base if you so determine it to be so, because you can place structures all over the map. You can determine what structures you want. This particular base, the reason they're holding this so tenaciously is because you'll notice there's two extractors in here. And extractors generate resources. There's 2 resource points that the teams can take in here, so it's a very valuable room. You can hold 2 extractors for the defensive price of 1. And if you do have a phase gate linking that to your main spawn point, it can be very, very valuable. So they've invested a lot in here. They've put an armory in here, and that will allow them to heal themselves and get more ammunition in here. They've also got those extractors, and as you say, they've got the phase gate. They've deployed some landmines on the floor, some proximity mines to try and catch unsuspecting aliens trying to attack. And the reason they want to hold that is primarily for those resources, but also, as you said, it becomes a stepping off point from where they can attack the rest of the map more easily.
Brilliant. Okay. So in terms of actual gameplay then, so at the moment, obviously the win condition is to kind of destroy the main building. Once you've destroyed that main hive or the command unit, that's kind of game one. Is there any other game modes planned? Is there kind of, there's a lot of games now that are taking on these kind of domination approaches. You hold 3 points or a capture objective, things like that. Have you guys toyed with any of those ideas based around what you've kind of built? Or is it kind of more this is the root of what made natural selection so popular that you want to stick to that and maybe kind of permeate on that a little bit?
Well, it's kind of like think of it in terms of StarCraft 2. You never ask StarCraft 2, where's your other game mode, because the game mode is that deep and that rich and that's exciting, and there's so much going on within it, and there's so much variation within it that you would never have a StarCraft 2. Like alternate, domination mode or something. Obviously, you have it in modding, and you definitely have lots of mods. That will come from that get made in StarCraft 2 and people play. But crucially, the game is StarCraft. You don't play domination StarCraft mode or whatever. You might modify difficulty if you're playing against AI or set them up in different spots. But it is StarCraft, and it's the same with natural selection. This is natural selection. It's a very deep, complex, wonderful, rich experience of gameplay that that means that we personally in the